Hello, I'm Charles, owner and founder of the Genesee Bushcraft and Survival School. This review is for the first of the survival knives that I've acquired and reviewed. This knife was purchased on Amazon from Grand Way. This knife is a 440C stainless steel, fairly decent quality. Came with a nylon sheath. It also came with a fire striker, which I left at home for fear of losing it, and also came with a cable saw. I am going to begin with the knife, proceed to the cable saw, the fire striker, and the sheath construction. This knife is a 440C stainless. It came out of the box with a fairly medium edge, about what you'd expect from a factory knife. It does have these funny little teeth on the top, which I attempted to saw with. They are not great for sawing. To me, they appear to be better for scaling fish or for working up tinder for a fire starter than actually sawing material, hence why it probably came with a cable saw. With this knife, it carves fairly decent. The edge retention is alright. I do have some rolling there up on the edge after using it and playing with it and testing it a little bit. I did baton a few chunks of wood and it performed fairly adequately. It split nicely. It's got that nice bevel there that acts like a good wedge. The tip is still intact. After with what I was batoning, I had about that much to hit. It's pretty solid there. It is decently intact. I was striking here on the handle on the backside a little bit with the full tang. In a survival situation, I've determined that I would probably be striking there if I had no other place to strike, and I did. With regards to that, the scales on either side have come a touch loose. I'm going to attempt to tighten these screws later on. If that tightening does not work, I will pull the scales off, and a paracord handle with a full tang like this should be quite sufficient, and that's something I can still use long term. It's a hefty knife. There are a variety of grips. I have, like so, behind this for finer things like skinning or fleshing or butchering an animal. I can choke up on it. I can get better grip like so for more of that fine detail. I can use the back end as a little bit of a hammer. I have used it a little bit. That may have contributed to the scales loosening. But overall, for the $24.95 that I paid for this knife, I would consider that about average for a sub $30 knife. What's a little bit different are the things that it came with. The fire striker was a nice big beefy striker. I left it at home because this here does not hold it solidly. That is a con on the sheath. I'll get to that later. It does strike fairly solid. It's about 3/8 of an inch thick. It's pretty good. This also came with a cable saw. A little cable saw. It's about what you'd expect from a cable saw. It at first seemed of good construction, and it hasn't broken on me yet, which is a bonus. I do know how to use these, and a lot of people tend to power through. They wrench on it, yank on it, and they really put some muscle behind it. You can't do that with a cable saw because you're going to tear apart these connections on the ends, or you're going to rip the cable. This one performed fairly satisfactory in terms of a cable saw, which is to say that about a 4-inch thick chunk of wood that I was cutting off a down tree, it took me about 20-25 minutes, which it's a cable saw. 4 inches is pretty thick for a cable saw. You're probably going to be going for more, 1.5 inches to 2 inches. Nothing terribly huge. This was also fairly dry and hard and seasoned. I'm not sure if that would do better with a wet chunk of wood or not. I did attempt the bow saw, which is to take a curved chunk of fairly resilient wood, put this on one end, thread this over the other end, make sure that it's flexible and whippy so there's a tensioner built in. That was moderately better. The same 4-inch chunk, cut it down to about 15 minutes. Subpar for a handsaw, subpar for you know, a traditional bladed saw. But in terms of a cable knife, it held up, and it's pretty alright at that. On to the sheath. I must say, with the exception of the Fire Striker, I enjoy this sheath very much. This one is a nylon with a Velcro attachment on the top for the knife. There's also Velcro there for the cable. The cable can be a little difficult to pull out of there. You've got to work your finger down in, hook it, and then pull it up. The sheath did not adequately hold the striker. I'm going to lose that striker if I go out into the wilderness with it just sitting in there. That's too loose, it flops right out. What I do enjoy about this sheath is the variety of ways you can attach it. There is a loop there for it higher up or in an upside down. This loop up top, it's a Velcro. So, as shown, I can feed it over the belt and take it off, and that Velcro is decently secure. You know, I feel like that is not going to come out on. Now this knife, just for the knife alone, was decent. The $24.95 that I paid for it. With the cable saw, which is a little you're probably better off getting an actual hand saw, a folding saw, just because it'll perform better. The striker was a nice little bonus, but you will want to either attach it more securely or put that striker somewhere else. Overall, I'd say for the price, this was a decent buy. It's a decent quality survival knife, even though the scales are coming off. For that price, I can manufacture a cheap paracord handle that will last a little bit better than the scales if these eventually do break off. So the link is in the description. Go take a peek. Consider it if you're on a budget. It is a good budget starter survival knife. Thank you for watching this video, and you have a fantastic summer.